Under a bruised Roman sky, the rain came down like punishment. Not soft, not gentle. Sharp, cold, and burning as it struck the cobblestones of the old market square. The air was thick with smoke and the sour scent of fear. Iron cages lined the streets, each holding something not quite human. The crowd pressed close, their faces pale under torchlight, their voices rising and falling like a cruel hymn. And above it all, a crimson banner flapped in the storm, its words bleeding in the wind. Auction of the cursed. Somewhere among the chained and the damned stood Lyra. Her wrists were raw where the shackles bit into her skin, her knees sinking into mud that smelled of blood and silver. The soldiers called her half-blood, traitor, beast. She had stopped listening to the names long ago. What hurt more was how quiet her wolf had become inside her, like a heartbeat waiting for permission to return. She had once been someone, heir to the Crescent Pack, the daughter of a proud alpha who swore the moon itself blessed her birth. Now she was a prize for the Romans to sell, a body to parade, a myth to break in front of men who would never understand what it meant to be born between two worlds. The auctioneer raised his voice over the storm. Behold the cursed she-wolf who defied her alpha, the flame-born witch of the Crescent bloodline. The crowd cheered. They didn't even know her story, but pain was always enough to entertain. Her head lifted just slightly, her hair plastered to her face, eyes glowing faintly beneath the grime. They called her cursed, but they had no idea what that meant. No one did. The only curse she carried was the memory of that night. The night the grove burned, the night her father fell, the night her fire refused to obey her. She had sworn she would never use it again, not unless it was to end all of this. Lightning split the sky, and for a moment, the world turned white. When the thunder rolled through the stone walls of the market, Lyra moved. A soldier leaned too close. His grip loosened as he turned to laugh at something, and she felt the chain slip. Her muscles coiled on instinct. The wolf in her snapped awake. One heartbeat. One decision. Then, she ran. The crowd shouted in confusion as the first chain clattered to the ground. Someone screamed her name. Someone else blew a horn. She didn't look back. Bare feet slammed against cold stone as she tore through the rain, dodging carts, knocking over barrels. Her lungs burning with the taste of silver. Every drop that hit her skin stung like fire. Every breath drew knives through her chest. But she kept running, because cages, no matter how gilded, no matter how guarded, had never been meant for her. The rain grew heavier, thick as molten lead. She stumbled through the archway of the market, into the narrow veins of the lower city. The alleys twisted like the scars on her back, familiar, painful, endless. Her vision blurred as she slipped past shadows and half-closed doors. Somewhere behind her, armor clashed, dogs barked, and the metallic tang of iron filled the air. She pressed herself against a wall, her heart beat so loud she could hear it in her ears. Her hands trembled uncontrollably, and as she looked down, she saw it. The faint shimmer beneath her fingertips. A flicker of silver flame. Small, almost tender. "No," she whispered, voice cracking. "Not now." She closed her fist tight, forcing it to die, to stay buried. The pain of suppressing it tore through her chest. She remembered the last time she'd let it free. The screams, the fire, her father's eyes before they turned to ash. "Not again," she whispered, more to herself than to the darkness. The soldier's footsteps grew louder. She could smell them. Iron, oil, wet leather. She knew how they hunted wolves, how they used silver water to burn through skin, how they enjoyed the sound it made when it hissed against fur. She pressed her back deeper into the shadows, every muscle trembling with exhaustion and fury. Her breathing slowed. The air in the alley was heavy, damp, filled with the echo of voices closing in. She could almost make out the words. Split up. Check the taverns. She bleeds silver. She can't hide for long. Her hands brushed over her stomach, feeling the cut from the whip that had struck her before she escaped. The wound still oozed faintly, mixing with rainwater, painting the ground in thin lines of crimson. Her body was shaking now, not from fear, but from restraint. The wolf inside her wanted to fight, wanted to tear through them all. But Lyra had spent too long trying not to become the monster they said she was. She leaned her head back against the wall, closing her eyes. For a moment, she let the sound of the rain drown out everything else. The storm became her heartbeat. The thunder became her pulse. Then a voice echoed inside her memory, the same one from the auction. Behold the cursed she-wolf who defied her alpha. She wanted to scream, to silence it, to tear that voice out of her mind. But she didn't. She stayed still, the rain soaking her to the bone, the air too cold to breathe. Then she felt it. Not the soldiers, not fear. Something else. Something ancient. A presence. The shadows shifted, darker than before, a movement at the edge of sight. She turned slowly, every instinct in her body screaming danger, but her body too weak to obey. Her hand reached for the dagger that wasn't there anymore. Her heart skipped a beat. The voice from the dark was low, steady, and close enough to make her spine freeze. Run, and they'll smell you. Stay, and you'll die. Lyra's breath caught in her throat. She didn't answer. Couldn't. The figure stepped closer, a silhouette against the flash of lightning. A hooded man, his cloak heavy with rain. The scent that reached her was not iron, not human. It was something familiar, something that stirred the beast sleeping beneath her ribs. Her lips parted, a tremor of disbelief breaking through her exhaustion. But before she could speak, he was gone, swallowed by the storm. The soldiers' voices came again, louder now, closer. Lyra pushed herself away from the wall, legs trembling, lungs burning. She needed to move, but her body wouldn't listen. Her vision swayed. The silver in the rain made her skin blister where it touched. The cut on her arm glowed faintly where her blood met the metal. Not again, she whispered, dragging herself into the mouth of another alley. I won't die in a cage. Not again. Every word felt like a promise, every breath a rebellion. Somewhere beyond the rooftops, the storm howled like wolves calling out her name. The night itself seemed to ache for her, torn between wanting her alive and wanting her gone. She pressed her back to the cold stone, staring up at the black sky, the taste of iron thick in her mouth. Her body was breaking, her wolf restless. But her heart refused to surrender. The sound of footsteps faded into the distance, replaced by the whisper of rain and the quiet crackle of the flame she tried so hard to hide. She opened her palm, watching the faint light dance across her skin, soft, trembling, alive. It was both beautiful and terrifying, like something too powerful to belong to her. Tears mixed with the rain on her cheeks as she whispered to the darkness, to no one, and to everything all at once. I didn't ask for this. I just wanted to be free. Her voice broke at the last word, carried away by the storm. The city slept behind her. The night stretched ahead, cold, endless, merciless. Somewhere in that darkness, her fate waited, and she had no choice but to meet it. The shadow from before appeared once more, at the far end of the alley, watching, silent. She didn't move. Neither did it. The air between them tightened, heavy with recognition, though she couldn't say why. Then, softly, almost kindly, it spoke again. They think you're cursed because they fear what they can't control. But you, Lyra. A pause. You were never meant to be controlled. And just like that, the shadow vanished into the rain. Her body trembled, her pulse quickened, but a strange calm settled in her chest. Somewhere deep inside, her wolf stirred. Awake. Listening. And for the first time in years, Lyra let herself believe. Maybe, just maybe, she wasn't alone. The storm raged on, but the fear inside her shifted, turning into something sharper, quieter. Determination. The streets of Rome whispered with ghosts and secrets, and Lyra stepped back into them like a woman who had already died once and had nothing left to lose. The crimson banner still hung in the distance, soaked and shredded by the wind. She stared at it for a long moment before turning away. Her voice, soft but steady, broke through the sound of rain. If your heart beats for stories of love, betrayal, and destiny, if you've ever felt the fire of being misunderstood, hunted, or broken but still alive, a breath, then you belong here. Subscribe to Sophie's romance collections, because some stories don't fade when the night ends. They burn, and they stay with you. And as the thunder rolled one last time, Lyra disappeared into the storm, her shadow melting into the rain, her heartbeat echoing in the dark like the promise of a flame that refused to die. The forest was a different kind of darkness, alive, breathing, watching. Mist curled around the roots like white smoke from a dying fire, swallowing the world in silence. The rain had followed her out of the city, but here, under the ancient pines, it softened into a whisper. Lyra stumbled over a root slick with mud and dropped to her knees. Her palms hit the earth with a wet slap, and for a heartbeat, she just stayed there. Trembling, breath shuddering through her chest, the metallic taste of blood still thick on her tongue. Her chains had cut deep into her wrists. The iron burned even now, though the links had broken miles ago. She tried to steady her breathing, but every inhale came out sharp and uneven. The silver in the rain still stung her skin. The auction's noise, the roars, the clanging of cages, the chant of cursed, it echoed inside her skull like it hadn't ended. The forest wasn't quiet. Something was moving out there. Slow, heavy, purposeful. She pressed herself against a fallen column, the ruin of some Roman bathhouse long swallowed by vines and moss. The scent of wet stone and crushed fern filled her lungs. Her heartbeat thudded against her ribs like it wanted out. She told herself she was safe now, that no one could have followed her this far. But she knew better. They always followed. Her body trembled violently, not from cold, but from what she'd felt back there. The flicker. That forbidden flame pulsing beneath her skin, begging to be released. She'd held it down, swallowed it whole, but it was still there. It always was. Waiting. Watching. Then came the sound. A crack of a branch. Slow steps in the mist. Lyra froze. Her hand twitched toward the blade she'd stolen off a guard, its edge dull and useless against silver. Another step. Closer. She pressed her back tighter to the wall. The air changed. Charged. Thick. Full of something primal. A scent rolled through the fog. Wood smoke. Leather. Rain-soaked fur. And something else. Something that made her wolf stir like it had been called. She didn't dare move, but the footsteps stopped right behind her. You shouldn't have run from the auction. The voice was low, calm, dangerous. She turned, knife raised, and froze again. The man before her wasn't one of the soldiers. He was tall, broad-shouldered, his cloak soaked through, hood pulled low. His eyes, even in the mist, glowed faintly amber. His presence filled the clearing like gravity itself. Lyra's grip faltered. Who are you? He stepped closer. The fog parted around him as if it knew better than to touch him. "Cassian," he said. "Alpha of the Praetorian Wolves." Her chest tightened. She'd heard the name whispered even before her capture. The Roman's wolf, the one who'd turned his back on the old Pax to serve the Empire. The traitor Alpha. She swallowed hard. "So, what now? You here to drag me back? Collect your bounty?" His gaze flicked to her wrists, then to the blood seeping from her side. "They'll brand you a murderer now." "I didn't kill anyone." He shrugged. "They don't care." There was no emotion in his tone, just truth, cold and unbending. He knelt beside her before she could move, his hand closing around her arm with controlled strength. She flinched, trying to pull away, but he held her still. "Let go. You're bleeding out. I don't need your help." "Too bad." He tore a strip of cloth from his cloak and pressed it against her wound. She hissed, more in shock than pain. The contact burned, not from silver, but from something deeper. His scent, his heat, the strange electricity crawling beneath her skin. He worked in silence, wrapping the bandage tight. His hands were rough, calloused. Soldier's hands. When he finally spoke, his voice had dropped even lower. "You heal fast. Too fast for a human." Lyra met his gaze, defiant even as her pulse betrayed her. "Maybe I'm not one." He smirked, just barely. "You're not just wolf either." Her throat tightened. "What do you know about me?" He tied off the bandage with a sharp tug. "Enough." "That's not an answer." He rose to his feet, his silhouette framed by the mist. "You think the Romans would risk silvered rain for any ordinary shifter? They fear you. They want you caged because they know what happens when the flame takes you." Her breath caught. That word. Flame. No one should have known. She stared up at him. "How do you know about that?" He turned his face away, jaw flexing. "Because I've seen it." She frowned. "You've seen me?" "No." His voice was quiet now, almost reverent. "I've seen what you become." The air between them shifted. Heavy. Electric. Lyra pushed herself to her feet, wincing as her leg protested. "You're lying." "I wish I was." Her heart was racing again. "Then tell me what you saw." He met her eyes. The gold in them burned like a dying sun. A girl standing where the world burns. Wolves kneel before her, and the moon bleeds red. "You were in the prophecy before you were born, Lyra." The sound of her name on his lips made something deep inside her ache. No one had spoken it since her capture. No one dared. "How do you know my name?" she whispered. Cassian stepped closer, close enough for her to feel the warmth radiating from his body despite the cold rain. "Because your mother made me swear to protect you." Lyra's breath hitched. "My mother's dead." "I know." "Then your promise means nothing." He studied her for a long moment, expression unreadable. "Maybe. But I intend to keep it anyway." She wanted to hate him, wanted to push him away. But his voice, calm, controlled, and threaded with something she couldn't name, rooted her to the spot. The rain had stopped, but her heart hadn't. She took a shaky step back. "If you're here to help, then help me disappear." "That's not what I was sent for." "Then why are you here?" He hesitated. The silence stretched, heavy with things neither of them were ready to say. Finally, he spoke. "To make sure you survive the night." Lyra's eyes narrowed. "And after that?" Cassian's jaw clenched. "We'll see." Thunder rumbled far off, echoing through the hills. Somewhere in the distance, wolves howled. Sharp, furious calls that made her stomach twist. They were still hunting her. Cassian's head tilted, listening. "They're closing in." She reached for her knife again, but he caught her wrist before she could move. Put that away. You'll only slow us down. She yanked her hand free. I don't take orders from traitors. His lips curved in a half smile that didn't reach his eyes. And yet you're still standing here. Her chest rose and fell with shallow breaths. He wasn't wrong. Something about him held her there, despite every instinct screaming to run. Cassian turned toward the deeper forest. We move now. Lyra didn't follow immediately. Her legs were shaking, her head spinning, but when he glanced back, just once, something in his expression softened. For a fleeting moment, she saw not the cold alpha of Rome's wolves, but a man who'd seen too much and trusted too little. Without another word, she followed. The forest swallowed them whole. The mist clung to their skin. The silence broken only by the crunch of boots and the faint hum of her heartbeat in her ears. Every step was a reminder of what she'd lost. Her pack, her freedom, her name. But beside her walked someone who carried his own ghosts. And somehow, that made the night feel a little less empty. She didn't know if she could trust him. But for the first time since the chains broke, she wasn't running alone. And though she didn't dare admit it yet, not to him, not even to herself, some part of her already knew. Her fate and his were about to collide in ways neither could control. The prophecy wasn't a story. It was a warning. And it had just begun. The catacombs beneath the old city breathed like something alive. The air was thick, damp with centuries of forgotten prayers, salt, and smoke. Water dripped from the ceiling in slow, rhythmic beats, echoing through the carved tunnels like the ticking of an unseen clock. Every drop reminded Lyra she was still here, still breathing, still hunted. Cassian led the way through the maze of stone corridors, his torch cutting through the dark with a low golden glow. The flame danced over his face, sharp cheekbones, jaw locked in thought. He moved like a man who knew every shadow by name. Lyra followed in silence, every step sending a whisper through the hollow ground. She didn't ask where they were going. She didn't need to. No one went underground unless they were hiding from something worse above. When they finally reached the chamber, Cassian set the torch into a metal sconce. The room opened wide, circular, built of crumbling pillars and fractured marble. Faded murals told old stories. Wolves kneeling under a blood-red moon, swords raised against the sky. The place smelled of old smoke and iron. A sanctuary carved by outcasts. Lyra sank down on a slab of stone, exhaustion catching up like a slow flood. Her hands shook. The torchlight flickered across her face, catching the faint shimmer of ash still smeared along her jawline. Cassian watched her for a long while before speaking. You shouldn't stay here long. These tunnels weren't built to keep people safe. They were built to keep them forgotten. She let out a breath that wasn't quite a laugh. Then it's perfect for me. His eyes softened just slightly. That's not what I meant. No? Her gaze drifted to the cracks in the wall. Because that's exactly what I am. Forgotten. The words lingered between them, fragile and true. Cassian sat across from her, resting his forearms on his knees. The flicker of the flame caught his eyes, turning them molten gold for a heartbeat. Tell me what really happened, he said quietly. Lyra didn't look up. You already know what they say. I want to hear it from you. Her fingers tightened against the stone. You wouldn't believe me. Try me. She closed her eyes. For a moment, all she could hear was the rain outside the catacomb, distant but relentless. Then the memories came. Sharp, painful, too vivid to belong to the past. I was 16, she began, her voice low, brittle. The night the grove burned. Cassian didn't move. It was the night of the moon oath. My father was leading the ritual. Every pack member there to honor the bond of our bloodline. The Crescent Pack. We believed the flame of Luna herself ran through our veins. I didn't. I used to think it was just an old story to make us feel powerful. She swallowed hard. Until it happened. Her hands trembled. The Silver Legion came without warning. Roman armor glinting through the trees, torches burning brighter than stars. They called it a raid, but it was a slaughter. I remember the screams, the smell of metal and fur and blood. I remember running toward the sacred grove, hearing my father shout my name. The words began to crack. I tried to reach him. I tried to fight. But when I touched the ground, the air caught fire. It wasn't the Legion's torches. It was me. The flames came out of my hands. Wild, hungry, blinding. I couldn't stop it. The torch in the sconce hissed softly, as if responding. Lyra's eyes were far away now. The grove went up in seconds. The trees, the stones, the altar, my father. They said I'd summoned the cursed flame. They said I'd betrayed my pack. Her voice broke into a whisper. Maybe they were right. Cassian's expression didn't change, but something in his posture did. The faintest shift, the kind that comes when a wound inside you is quietly reopening. What they called betrayal, he said, was survival. She shook her head. No one survived. Not really. The Legion made sure of that. Lyra blinked, startled by the bitterness in his tone. You've seen them do it before. His jaw tightened. I've seen them do worse. The silence that followed was heavy, full of ghosts neither of them dared name. Lyra stared at the wall, at the faint carvings etched into the stone. A crescent moon half buried in vines. After the fire, they dragged me to the council, said I was no longer one of them. They called it exilium luporum, banishment of the wolf. Her lips twisted faintly. They took my name from the records, my pack, my home, everything. And the Romans found you. They always do. She paused. They wanted the power in my blood. Said it was ancient. Said it could be controlled. Cassian's eyes darkened. They've been hunting that power for generations. Her gaze flicked up to him. You talk like you know it. I do. Something in his voice made her heartbeat falter. How? Cassian leaned back against the wall, the shadows cutting across his face. Because once, I was their weapon too. She stared at him, unsure if she'd heard right. He didn't look at her when he spoke next. The Praetorian wolves weren't always loyal to Rome. We were a free pack, proud, wild, untamed. But when the Empire came for us, they offered a choice: serve or die. I chose service. I thought I could protect my people from the inside. His voice dropped. I was wrong. Lyra didn't speak. She knew that tone, the sound of someone who'd buried too many names. They used us to hunt others like you, Cassian continued. Wolves with gifts they didn't understand. They called them abominations. I called them brothers. His eyes met hers then, full of quiet fury. Until they burned my pack too. The torchlight flickered. The walls seemed to tighten around them, echoing the sound of their shared pain. For a long moment, neither spoke. Just the sound of water dripping, heartbeats loud in the silence. Then Lyra exhaled. Maybe we deserve each other then. Cassian's expression softened. No one deserves this. She gave a tired smile. You sound like someone who's tried to believe that for a long time. He didn't answer. He didn't have to. The silence stretched again, softer this time, less empty. The air between them hummed with something unspoken. Lyra hesitated, then reached for her sleeve. There's something else you should know. She pulled the fabric back, revealing her forearm. The torchlight caught it. A faint, glowing scar shaped like a crescent, the edges pulsing gently as if alive. Cassian's eyes widened. He reached out but stopped short of touching it. The mark of the flame. You know it? His voice was barely a whisper. Every alpha child was taught the story. The mark belonged to the protectors, wolves chosen by Luna's fire to guard the balance between our kind and the world of men. We thought the bloodline was gone. Lyra's voice trembled. I wish it was. It's not a curse, he said. It's a call. She met his gaze, tears glimmering faintly in her eyes. A call that killed everyone I loved. He leaned forward, tone quiet but firm. It wasn't you. The flame isn't evil, Lyra. It's only what you make it. She shook her head, voice breaking. You don't understand. I don't trust my wolf anymore. Every time it surfaces, something burns. Something breaks. Cassian didn't flinch. Then let me trust it for you. Her breath caught. The words hit her like a heartbeat too strong. He moved closer, slow, careful, like approaching a wounded creature that might still bite. You've been running from what you are because no one ever told you what it means. You're not cursed, Lyra. You're chosen. Her voice came out small. Chosen for what? For what's coming. The ground trembled faintly, the kind of vibration that came before distant thunder. But this wasn't thunder. It was the low, mournful howl of a wolf echoing through the tunnels, followed by another. Then another. Cassian's head snapped up. They've found us. Lyra rose to her feet, heart hammering. Romans? No? His eyes narrowed. Worse. He stepped toward the tunnel entrance, every muscle tense. The torchlight flickered wildly, throwing his shadow across the walls like a beast stretching into its true form. Lyra's pulse quickened. She could feel her flame stir again, unbidden, answering some silent call in the air. She clenched her fists, forcing it down, but the heat burned under her skin. Cassian turned back to her, voice low but steady. If we're going to make it out, you'll have to trust me. She met his gaze. You said that before. I meant it. The howls grew louder, closer. The catacombs groaned as dust rained from the ceiling. Lyra took one last breath, her fear folding into something sharper. Something alive. Whatever hunted them in the dark was coming fast. And this time, she wasn't sure if she feared it, or herself, more. The night bled silver. Mist hung low over the ruins, soft as breath, wrapping the broken grove in a shroud of memory and moonlight. Every step Lyra took stirred the ashes of a world that had burned because of her. The scent of rain and char still clung to the soil. Ancient, mournful, forgiving nothing. The forest had changed since the night of the fire. The trees no longer whispered her name. Their branches curled inward like hands reaching toward something lost. Yet beneath the ruin, the pulse of power remained, quiet but alive, buried under stone and root, waiting. Cassian walked ahead, his silhouette sharp against the rising fog. The faint glow of his torch flickered with each breath of wind, the light brushing against fragments of marble columns and shards of wolf statues. Roman carvings tangled with old lupine sigils, two worlds fused by war and worship. When they reached the heart of the grove, Lyra stopped. The air thickened. The earth seemed to hum. Before them stood what remained of the altar. Half stone, half vine. Its surface cracked and veined with silver light. Cassian lowered the torch, eyes scanning the runes etched into the rock. These weren't Roman, he murmured. Older, pre-imperial. The language of the first Pax. Lyra stepped closer. Her fingers brushed the runes, tracing the lines as if her body remembered what her mind could not. The symbols pulsed faintly under her touch, warm, alive, responsive. "What does it say?" she whispered. Cassian tilted his head, lips moving as he read. "Ignis sub luna sanguine renascitur. The flame shall rise when the moon bleeds." Lyra's chest tightened. The moon bleeds. Her gaze lifted toward the sky, where clouds drifted like torn silk across the pale glow. "You think it means tonight?" He didn't answer immediately. "I think it means you." The words landed between them like a spark in dry grass. Lyra looked away, but she couldn't stop her pulse from quickening. The grove's energy wrapped around her, humming low in her veins, as though the ground itself recognized her. Cassian stepped forward, lowering his voice. "Do you feel that?" "Yes." It came out as a breath. "It's been calling since we entered the forest. Like, something's listening." He nodded. "It is." A sudden gust tore through the clearing, scattering ash into the air. The torch flickered wildly, almost going out. Then, from the darkness, a voice, soft, broken, ancient, rose from the trees. "You've come home, child of the flame." Lyra spun, instincts snapping into place. The air smelled of sage and smoke. A figure emerged from the mist, small, bent, cloaked in the tattered remnants of priestly robes. Her eyes were clouded white, blind, yet her face turned directly toward Lyra, as if she could see her soul. Cassian's hand went to the knife at his belt, but the old woman only lifted a hand. "Do not fear me, Alpha of the Lost. I served the fire long before your packs bowed to Rome." Lyra's throat went dry. "Who are you?" The woman smiled faintly. "Once, I was the oracle's voice. Now, I am what remains of her echo." She stepped closer, her bare feet silent on the cold earth. "And you, child, you are what we were waiting for." Lyra shook her head. "No, whatever you think I am is already written," the seer interrupted softly. "In your blood, in your breath, in every ember that survived the burning." Cassian frowned. "Prophecies are just words." The seer turned toward him, her blind eyes narrowing. "Spoken like a wolf who has tried too hard not to believe." The silence that followed carried the weight of truth. Cassian's jaw flexed, but he said nothing. The old woman turned back to Lyra. "The moon bled the night you were born. The flame marked you before your first cry. You carry both its mercy and its wrath." Lyra took a step back, shaking her head. "No, that power, whatever it is, it destroys everything it touches." "Only because you've never let it speak," the seer replied. "The flame does not choose the wicked, it chooses the wounded." Something in Lyra's chest cracked open at those words. The seer reached out a trembling hand. "Close your eyes, child. Let it show you." Cassian started forward, but Lyra stopped him with a look. She hesitated only a moment before obeying. Darkness, then light. Blinding, searing, endless light. It wasn't a vision. It was immersion. She wasn't standing in the grove anymore. She was inside it, centuries ago. When the trees burned silver instead of ash. The air was alive with wolves, massive, radiant, their fur shimmering with light like moonlit water. In the center of them stood a woman cloaked in flame. Her eyes were Lyra's eyes. A voice echoed through the vision, ancient, melodic. "When the moon bleeds and the flame awakens, the world shall burn to be remade. 2 fires shall rise, one to heal, one to destroy. The child must choose." The world fractured. Fire and blood collided. The silver wolves fell, their howls swallowed by shadow. Lyra saw herself in both halves. One bathed in warmth, the other in ruin. Then everything went still. When she opened her eyes, she was on her knees, breath ragged. The The seer stood over her, silent. Cassian knelt beside her immediately. Lyra. His hand brushed her shoulder. What did you see? Her voice trembled. Two flames, one that healed, one that killed. I don't know which I am. Cassian's fingers tightened against her arm. Don't say that. But it's true, she whispered. What if the fire inside me isn't meant to save anyone? Then we'll change its meaning, he said. Together. She looked up at him, eyes shining with disbelief. You don't even know if it's possible. I don't care. His voice dropped, raw and unguarded. What I do know is that every time you try to smother that flame, you lose a part of yourself. And I've seen what happens when the world forces a wolf to forget who they are. Lyra stared at him, and for a heartbeat the grove vanished. The pain, the fear, the centuries of guilt. All that remained was the weight of his gaze and the unspoken truth that tied them together. The seer's voice broke the silence. You cannot escape what you are, child. But you can decide what your fire burns for. Lyra rose slowly, the strength returning to her voice. And if I burn for the wrong thing? Then you will learn, the seer said. That is what the chosen do. They learn the cost of their own light. The torch beside them flared suddenly, its flame turning white. The ground trembled beneath their feet. The grove's runes ignited all at once, bathing the ruins in silver radiance. Cassian shielded his eyes. What's happening? The seer's tone was calm, almost reverent. The prophecy has recognized her. Lyra's pulse raced. Recognized me for what? The one who will decide how the fire ends. A sound broke through the grove. A deep, resonant howl that made the trees shudder. Not a warning, a summoning. Cassian's head snapped toward the forest's edge. They're coming again. The seer didn't move. Let them come. The child of flame will not hide much longer. Lyra's hands glowed faintly, heat pulsing through her veins. The light spilled from her palms like living silver, wrapping around her fingers before fading again. I can't control it, she whispered. You can, Cassian said quietly, taking her hand. You just don't trust yourself yet. The seer smiled, faint and knowing. The wolf beside you has already made his choice. The question is, will you make yours before the moon bleeds again? The wind rose, scattering embers through the grove. Lyra turned toward the altar one last time. The carvings now blazed like fire trapped in stone. She didn't understand the prophecy. She didn't know which flame she carried. But one truth settled deep in her chest, fierce and undeniable. Whatever destiny had written, she would not let it decide who she became. And as the first drops of red moonlight cut through the clouds, painting her skin in a soft crimson glow, the grove seemed to whisper her name again. No longer in accusation, but in recognition. Lyra of the Flame, the one who would either save them all or burn the world to ash. The roar of the crowd tore through the night like a storm tearing apart the heavens. The amphitheater burned with torches, gold fire licking the marble edges of Rome's heart. And in the center, beneath the gaze of the emperor and the stench of iron and fear, stood two figures that did not belong to this world. Cassian's shoulders bled beneath the weight of silver chains. His wrists were raw. Skin seared where the metal met flesh. Each breath was jagged, but his eyes, those cold, storm-gray eyes, never left her. Lyra. She stood across from him, her hands bound, her knees trembling as the Roman soldiers shoved her forward. The scent of oil and blood coated the air. Above, the moon loomed fat and white, indifferent to their suffering. The murmurs of the crowd grew louder. Monster, witch, demon. General Draven stepped into the light. Bronze armor gleamed like sunlight caught in a blade, his expression carved in stone. "Alpha Cassian," he said, voice carrying like thunder through the stands. "Once commander of the Praetorian Wolves, now traitor to Rome. And you—" He turned to Lyra, his lip curling. "The fire-born heretic who burned her own kin. The Emperor demands judgment." The crowd responded in waves of sound. "Kill them both. Burn the beasts. Make them fight." Cassian said nothing. His silence was more defiant than any words could be. But Lyra felt the pulse of fear crawling beneath her skin, the old memory of flames and screams clawing back from the depths of her mind. Draven circled her slowly, his boots echoing against the stone floor. "You should have stayed dead in the ashes of your grove," he sneered. "But fate seems to have a cruel sense of humor." Cassian lifted his head, blood running down his temple. "You speak of fate, Draven, yet you hide behind chains and masters." The general's eyes flashed. "I serve order. Rome endures because beasts like you are kept on leashes." A ripple of laughter spread through the crowd. Lyra's jaw tightened. The bond between her and Cassian hummed, quiet, invisible, but alive. Beneath her fear, beneath the pain, there was something else, an ache that felt ancient, inevitable. Draven stepped closer. "The Emperor offers a choice," he announced. "The wolf girl dies, and your pack is spared. Or she lives, and every shifter hiding in our lands will burn." The crowd hushed. Cassian's breath caught. His gaze met Lyra's, and for a moment the world disappeared. The marble, the soldiers, the fire. All that remained was the sound of her heartbeat, frantic and fragile, echoing inside him. He didn't answer. Draven's hand twitched and the soldiers shoved Lyra to her knees. A spear tip pressed against her throat. Cassian strained against his chains, silver burning into his flesh. "Stop!" The word was low, guttural, a growl that carried through the silence. Draven smiled. "Then speak your choice." Cassian's voice broke, not with weakness, but with something deeper, grief sharpened into rage. "If Rome demands blood, take mine." Lyra's breath caught. "No." But before she could speak again, the crowd erupted. The Emperor raised his hand, a lazy gesture of authority, and the torches flared brighter, casting long shadows across the arena. The soldiers moved forward. Something inside Lyra cracked. The world slowed, the noise fading into a low hum. She felt it, the flicker beneath her skin, the whisper of something ancient waking. Heat poured from her veins like molten silver. The spear snapped before it could pierce her throat. Draven stumbled back, his eyes widening as the air around her shimmered. Flame licked her wrists, devouring the chains like they were made of wax. Silver fire spiraled upward, wrapping her body in light that pulsed with every heartbeat. The scent of burning iron filled the air. Cassian's breath hitched. "Lyra." Her eyes met his. They glowed with a light not of this world. "You shouldn't have followed me." He tried to move toward her, but the chains held tight. "You think I could have done anything else?" The fire flared. The amphitheater shook. The moon itself seemed to pulse with her fury. Draven shouted orders, but his voice was lost in the roar of the awakening flame. Soldiers screamed as the ground split. Marble shattered. From somewhere deep below, the ancient runes of the arena ignited, symbols of wolf and flame burning gold. Lyra's power burst outward in a single breath, a storm of fire and wind. The chains melted, the torches bent, the crowd scattered like shadows before dawn. And yet, Cassian didn't move. He stood in the center of it, his eyes on her, his heart pounding in sync with hers. She looked at him through the haze of flame. "They'll kill you for this." He smiled faintly. "They already have." The fire surged again, wild, uncontrollable. Cassian lunged forward, shielding her with his body as a column of light erupted where she stood. His skin seared. The scent of burning flesh filled the air. Cassian! Her voice broke. He gritted his teeth, holding her close as the fire consumed everything around them. Don't fight it! Let it burn! And she did. The world disappeared into silver light. When the glow faded, silence fell. The amphitheater was gone, half of it reduced to smoking ruin. Soldiers lay scattered like ash in the wind. The emperor's dais had collapsed, marble cracked and blackened. Lyra lay on the ground, trembling, her clothes torn, her breath shallow. The air around her still shimmered faintly with the remnants of the flame. Cassian knelt beside her, his chest heaving, blood dripping from a wound that cut deep across his ribs. His eyes were softer now, shadows flickering behind them. "You have to go," he whispered. "They'll come again." She shook her head weakly. "Not without you." He smiled faintly, a ghost of something that once might have been warmth. "You will. Because you must." He pressed his forehead against hers, their breaths mingling. The bond between them flared, pain and love, promise and doom intertwined. "I'll find you," she whispered. "I know." The sound of approaching soldiers echoed through the ruins. Cassian stood, placing himself between her and the chaos. "Go, Lyra." She hesitated for a heartbeat too long. Then, with the last of her strength, she turned and ran, vanishing into the smoke, her heart breaking with every step. Cassian watched her go, his vision blurring as blood soaked the sand. Draven staggered from the shadows, sword in hand, eyes filled with hate. "You should have stayed loyal." Cassian's smile was thin, blood on his teeth. "Loyalty dies when honor does." Draven lunged. The sound of steel meeting flesh split the air. Cassian's body jerked, but his hand shot out, grabbing Draven's wrist, pulling him close enough to whisper, "Rome will burn before she does." Then the light left his eyes. Lyra felt it from far away, the sudden tear in the bond, the hollow ache that dropped her to her knees in the forest beyond the city walls. She didn't cry. The tears had burned away long ago. Instead, she lifted her face to the moon and whispered his name. "Cassian." The world answered with silence. But deep in the ruins of the amphitheater, where his blood met the ashes of her fire, something shimmered. The symbol of the crescent and flame glowed faintly, alive, waiting. A promise sealed not by words, but by destiny. The rain had chased her for hours. Cold, endless, relentless, until it softened into a mist that kissed her skin and clung to her lashes. Lyra moved through the trees like a ghost, her breath shallow, her thoughts jagged with grief. The fire in her blood had dimmed, leaving only exhaustion and the faint hum of something broken deep inside her. The forest beyond the Roman borderlands was older than memory, its roots tangled with bones and forgotten gods. Every step she took sent whispers through the ferns. She could smell smoke, faint but familiar. A scent that shouldn't have been there. Cassian. The name came like a wound reopening. Her pace quickened, though every part of her screamed to turn back. He was dead. She'd felt it. The bond had torn apart inside her chest like paper set aflame. And yet, the cave revealed itself behind a curtain of falling water, hidden in plain sight. The sound of the cascade drowned everything. Thoughts, heartbeat, even the steady pulse of her pain. She stepped through the veil of rain, and there he was. Cassian sat by a small fire, his back pressed against the cave wall, his skin pale beneath streaks of dirt and dried blood. The wound on his ribs, the one she'd seen take him down, was still there, raw and deep. but his chest rose and fell. Barely. He looked up when he felt her presence. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The world existed only in the space between his shallow breaths and the trembling of her hands. "You're supposed to be dead," she whispered. He gave a weak half-smile. "I'm stubborn." She dropped to her knees beside him, her fingers hovering just above the gash in his side. The scent of blood was heavy, metallic and intimate. She swallowed hard. "How did you—" "Didn't." His voice was hoarse, each word a struggle. "Someone dragged me out before the fire consumed the arena. I woke here. Don't know who or why." Lyra exhaled slowly, forcing down the panic. "You shouldn't be alive." "Neither should you." Their eyes locked, and the silence that followed was thick enough to drown in. She reached for his wound, and he flinched, instinct more than fear. "It's silver," he rasped. "You touch it. It'll burn you." "I can handle pain." Her hand glowed faintly, the ember of her flame flickering to life. The light was soft, golden rather than silver this time. Warmth instead of fury. She pressed her palm against his wound. Cassian gasped, his entire body tensing as the heat sank into his flesh. The fire hissed softly as it sealed the torn skin, leaving faint, curling scars like whispers of old flames. His hand gripped her wrist, hard, trembling. "Stop. You'll drain yourself." She ignored him. "You think I haven't burned before?" Her voice broke on the last word. The flame steadied, gentled. It wasn't destruction anymore. It was care. When it was done, she collapsed back on her heels, breath ragged. The light faded from her fingers. Cassian's wound was closed, though the faint shimmer of the mark remained, a reminder of what had almost been his end. He sat up slowly, wincing. "You shouldn't have done that." "Neither should you have survived," she said, her tone quiet but edged. The silence that followed was heavier than before. The fire between them cracked softly, shadows playing across the stone walls. Outside, the waterfall murmured like distant applause for a tragedy still unfolding. Cassian's voice broke through at last. "When I joined the Romans, I thought I could control them, that if I gave them my loyalty, they'd spare my pack." His gaze dropped to the ground. "They didn't. They used me. When the slaughter came, I obeyed an order I should have refused. My men died believing I betrayed them." Lyra didn't move. She watched the way his hands tightened, how his breath caught, not with pain, but with the memory of it. "They called me Alpha," he said softly, "but I was just their weapon. And you think saying that makes it less of a sin?" Her voice trembled, not from anger, but from something deeper, something she didn't want to name. He met her gaze. "No, but I won't lie to you." Lyra's fingers brushed the ground. The scent of earth mixed with smoke, the air thick between them. "You fought beside those who hunted my kind." "I fought to protect what little I had left," he said. "Does that make me less guilty?" "Maybe. Maybe not. But if I hadn't done it, I'd have died with them." Her flame stirred again, faint and uncertain. "So you survived while they burned?" "Yes." His voice cracked. "And now I live with that." Lyra looked into the fire. "I can forgive you, Cassian. But I can't trust you yet." The words hit him harder than any blade. He didn't look away, didn't flinch. "That's fair." Her head lifted, eyes wet but fierce. "No, it's not. Because I want to." The silence that followed wasn't empty. It was alive, heavy with everything unsaid. Cassian moved first, leaning closer to the firelight. The shadows carved along his face softened. His breath was uneven, the warmth of it brushing against her cheek. "You shouldn't." "Why not?" Because I don't deserve it. She studied him, the hollow beneath his eyes, the scar along his jaw, the exhaustion that lived in his bones. And yet I'm still here. He laughed under his breath, bitter and quiet. You're dangerous, Lyra. Because I care? Because you make me forget why I shouldn't. The fire crackled louder. The world outside the cave seemed to disappear entirely. His gaze drifted to her lips, slow, unwilling, inevitable. Lyra felt it too, the gravity between them, that ancient pull that had nothing to do with logic. Her pulse quickened, the wolf within her stirring at the nearness of him. Cassian's voice dropped to a whisper. If I touch you, I won't stop. The air thickened. She didn't move, didn't speak. The only sound was the rush of the waterfall, steady as a heartbeat. Then, slowly, she reached for him. Her fingertips brushed the edge of his jaw, a touch softer than breath, fragile as the space between forgiveness and surrender. His hand rose to meet hers, catching it halfway. His thumb traced the line of her wrist, feeling the faint hum of her pulse. His eyes closed for a heartbeat too long. Don't, he murmured. You'll regret it. Then let me, she said. The fire flared between them, not the wild, consuming blaze of battle, but something deeper. A quiet burn that began where her skin met his and spread until it filled the cave with warmth that felt like truth. But he didn't close the distance. He stood instead, turning toward the waterfall. The movement broke something in her. Not the bond, but the illusion of safety. Why do you keep running from what's already yours? She asked softly. He didn't turn around. Because everything I touch burns. So does everything that matters. He laughed once, low, broken, disbelieving. Then he turned back to her, eyes shining in the firelight. You think this is simple? I think it's real, she said. And that terrifies you. He stepped closer, each stride slow, deliberate. The firelight painted gold on his skin, catching the faint sheen of sweat, the scars that mapped his past. When he stopped, he was close enough for her to feel the heat of him, close enough that every breath they took was shared. Tell me what you want, Lyra, he whispered. She looked at him, not at his face, but into the space behind it, into the part of him that was still bleeding. I want to stop running. His jaw tightened. The sound he made wasn't quite a sigh. Then trust me. She shook her head slowly. Not yet. Then leave. Her heart stumbled. What? If you can't trust me, you shouldn't stay. I won't let you stay out of pity or fear. Either you walk away, or you give me a reason not to. The words cut deep. She rose, her bare feet brushing against the damp stone. The fire cast long shadows that reached for both of them. Lyra walked until she stood beside him at the mouth of the cave. The waterfall's spray cooled her skin. She looked past it, toward the world she'd once known. The burning groves, the ashes, the ruins of everything she'd been. Then she turned back to him. Her hand lifted, finding his chest, fingers splayed over his heartbeat. You're an idiot, she said softly. He blinked, taken aback. I'm not leaving. And before he could answer, she leaned in, pressing her forehead against his. The contact was small, but the world seemed to hold its breath. Cassian's hand found the back of her neck, fingers threading into her damp hair. He didn't kiss her. He didn't need to. The air between them pulsed with the promise of something neither could yet claim. When she finally stepped back, her eyes glowed faintly with the warmth of her flame. You can't make me trust you, Cassian, but you can earn it. He nodded once, slow. Then I'll start tonight. She smiled faintly. By doing what? By not touching you. Her laugh was quiet, disbelieving. That might be the hardest thing you've ever done. He met her gaze, steady now, the storm inside him finally still. You have no idea. Outside, the rain began again, soft and endless. The firelight flickered across their faces. Two souls caught between war and longing, bound by something older than both. For the first time since the arena, Lyra felt the world stop running. For the first time since the grove burned, Cassian felt something worth surviving for. And though neither spoke it aloud, both knew the same truth. The bond between them was no longer prophecy or curse. It was choice, and choice was far more dangerous than fate. The night began with hope. It should have ended with peace. Lyra stood beneath the torches of the council arena, the same stone ring once used by the Romans to parade shifters before the crowd. The same ground where she and Cassian had nearly died. Now it was filled with wolves from every surviving pack, their eyes burning like scattered embers in the dark. The scent of wet ash clung to the air. Rain had passed, but smoke lingered. Faint reminders of the fires that had brought them all here. She stood at the center of it, unbound, unchained, yet feeling the weight of invisible shackles. Her cloak was torn at the hem, her hair damp from the mist that rolled across the amphitheater's open sky. Cassian stood a few paces behind her, close enough that she could feel the heat of him, but far enough that she knew he wasn't sure where he belonged. Lyra's voice carried when she spoke. We've all bled under the Romans' chains. We've all watched them pit us against each other like beasts. Tonight, I ask not for allegiance, but for mercy. For a chance to unite before we're hunted into extinction. Her words trembled, not from fear but from the weight of memory. The council members, old wolves cloaked in pelts and pride, exchanged looks. An elder stood, voice gravelly. You speak of unity, child. Yet you carry the mark that burned our forests. The same flame that scorched the crescent grove. Lyra's breath caught, but she didn't look away. The grove burned because the Romans poisoned our lands. I tried to stop it. I failed. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Cassian stepped forward, his tone calm but edged. I was there. The fire wasn't her doing. It was theirs. But the elder only sneered. And who are you to speak for her, Praetorian? You, who wore their armor? Cassian's jaw clenched. Lyra felt the tension rise behind her like thunder in her bones. Before she could speak again, a voice cut through the air. One she hadn't heard in years. Enough. The crowd parted. A woman emerged from the shadows of the arena steps, her hood falling back to reveal a face Lyra knew too well. Ceres, her sister. The world tilted, if only for a second. Lyra's pulse stumbled. Ceres? Her sister's smile was small, brittle. You always were dramatic, Lyra, standing in the center of ruin, pretending to be savior. The crowd whispered her name. The resemblance was unmistakable. Same silver streak through dark hair, same golden eyes that shimmered under torchlight. Lyra took a step forward. You're alive. Ceres tilted her head. Alive, because I ran before your flame reached me. The words hit like claws. Lyra's throat tightened. You think I meant to? I don't think, Ceres interrupted. I remember watching our father burn. I remember the grove collapsing around us while you stood in the center of it, glowing like some cursed goddess. And now you stand here, asking the packs to kneel to you again? Lyra's knees weakened, but she forced herself upright. That's not what I'm asking. Ceres stepped closer. The prophecy called you the flame of destruction. It wasn't metaphor, Lyra. It was warning. The words rippled through the crowd like wind through dry leaves. Every gaze turned sharper, every breath heavier. Cassian's voice was low, urgent. "Saris, you don't know what you're saying." "Oh, I do," she said, her tone slicing through the air. "You've seen it too, haven't you, Alpha? The way her power consumes everything it touches. Tell them, Cassian. Tell them what she did in the amphitheater. Tell them how many burned when she lost control." Lyra turned to him, heart pounding. "Cassian?" He looked torn, his jaw tight, his eyes a storm she couldn't read. "Lyra, it's not that simple." "Tell them," Saris demanded again. Cassian hesitated, just long enough. That pause was enough to break her. Lyra's voice cracked, soft but sharp as glass. "You believe her?" His silence was a knife. He didn't deny it fast enough, didn't move, didn't reach for her. And that stillness, that single aching hesitation, shattered what little of her heart was left intact. The crowd began to murmur again, the sound swelling into accusation. Cursed, prophecy, destroyer. Lyra's breath quickened. The heat under her skin stirred, wild and unrestrained. She tried to swallow it down, but it surged with every word spoken against her. Saris stepped forward, holding up a small iron pendant, the crescent insignia of their pack, half melted, twisted by flame. "This was our father's," she said, "found at the heart of the grove you burned." The crowd roared. Anger, fear, hysteria. Lyra's vision blurred. She could smell silver and smoke, taste betrayal in the back of her throat. "Stop it," she whispered. "Please." But the voices only grew louder. "Cursed flame! Kill her before she burns us all." Cassian moved then, stepping in front of her, but too late. The soldiers at the edge of the arena raised their spears. The world tilted toward chaos again. Lyra's power cracked open. Flame burst from her palms, white hot and wild, spiraling upward in a storm of light and ash. The torches exploded. Wolves fell back, blinded by the brilliance. The ground trembled beneath her feet. Cassian shouted something, her name maybe, but the fire roared too loud to hear. When she looked up, her sister's face was lit by the glow. Half awe, half horror. "Do you see now?" Saris screamed. "She is the prophecy." Lyra felt something tear inside her, the last thread of restraint, of humanity. "You want a monster?" she whispered. "Then I'll be one." The fire obeyed. It surged from her chest, unfurling like wings of molten silver. The council's banners ignited, symbols of unity burning to nothing in seconds. The amphitheater glowed like a dying star. Cassian pushed through the chaos, reaching for her wrist. "Lyra, stop!" But she was already gone, lost inside the storm of her own making. The flames didn't burn her. They sang to her, a language older than fear. Cassian grabbed her shoulders, shaking her. "Listen to me." Her eyes blazed with light. "You should have defended me. I was trying to save you." "No," she said, voice trembling. "You hesitated." He looked at her, really looked, and the truth hit him like a blade. Her tears shimmered, burning away before they could fall. "You were my mate," she whispered, voice breaking like glass. "Until you tried to kill me." He froze. "I never—" But the words died under the roar of her power. She turned away. The flames followed, coiling around her like a crown of ruin. The crowd scattered, soldiers falling back, eyes wide with terror. Cassian reached out once more, but the air between them burned too hot to cross. Lyra stepped into the light, her silhouette sharp against the inferno. The mark on her neck, the crescent scar, flared to life, glowing brighter than the moon. And then, as suddenly as it came, the fire collapsed inward. Silence. When the smoke cleared, The arena was empty, but for the blackened ground where she had stood. Cassian fell to his knees, the heat still radiating through the stone. The ashes of the council's insignia drifted around him like snow. Somewhere in the distance, a wolf howled, long, mournful, endless. Lyra was gone. Through the forest she ran, barefoot, breathless, her tears indistinguishable from the rain. The trees leaned away as she passed, sensing her fury, her grief, her power. Every step was a heartbeat of rage and sorrow. She didn't know where she was going, only that she couldn't stop. Not yet. Behind her, the council burned. Ahead of her, the world waited, a world that would either bow to her flame or be consumed by it. And though her heart ached for the bond she'd broken, for the love she'd buried, one truth echoed louder than the rest. She would never kneel again. Under the blood-red moon, Rome burned. The city had always reeked of power, stone and iron, smoke and empire. But tonight, it reeked of fear. The skies bled crimson, clouds rippling like torn silk above the ancient battlefield where the wolves knelt in chains. They were lined along the broken road to the Colosseum, their bodies beaten, fur matted with blood and ash. Roman banners fluttered above them, gold-threaded eagles that shimmered against the firelight. At the center stood General Draven, his armor black as obsidian, his hand gripping a blade forged from silver and sanctified by priests. Every strike of the hammer, every chant of the priests around him pulsed with one intent: sacrifice. Lyra had seen this before, in dreams, in visions. The same road, the same moon, the same scent of burning flesh. But this time, she wasn't hiding. The horizon shimmered before she appeared, a mirage of flame walking through the mist. The Romans stilled as her shadow stretched across the battlefield. Long and unyielding, her hair burned silver white, flowing like liquid fire. Her eyes, those once soft amber eyes, now glowed with the depth of a storm. Every step she took scorched the earth, and yet where she walked, the dead grass sprang back to life, glowing faintly as if blessed by her passing. The wolves lifted their heads. Some whispered her name like a prayer. Others flinched, remembering the destruction she had once unleashed. Cassian stood among the chained, his wrists bound in silver cuffs, his eyes locked on her approach. The sight of her, radiant, terrifying, divine, stole the breath from his chest. "Lyra," he whispered, though she couldn't hear him through the din. She moved through the ranks of soldiers like the tide reclaiming the shore. Spears wavered. Shields trembled. The priests' chants faltered. General Draven's voice cut through the panic. "Hold formation. She's one of them. The witch burns bright, but she bleeds like the rest." Lyra's gaze flicked toward him, unblinking. "You've killed enough," she said, her voice soft. Too soft for the power that rolled behind it. Draven laughed, the sound jagged. "Killed? No. Purified. These beasts were curses upon the gods. Tonight, we cleanse their taint." He raised his sword, the silver edge catching moonlight. Lyra's hand lifted, just a fraction, and the air bent around her. The blade shuddered, metal screaming under unseen pressure. Then it melted. Draven's expression faltered as molten silver dripped through his gauntlets. Lyra's voice was calm, almost mournful. "You call it cleansing. I call it murder." Cassian strained against his chains. "Lyra, stop. They'll use the blood seals. They've prepared for this." But she didn't stop. She moved closer, each word trailing heat through the air. "Then let them see what the prophecy truly meant." The earth cracked beneath her feet. Flames erupted, not wild, not destructive, but controlled, spiraling upward in shapes that pulsed like living spirits. The chained wolves gasped as the light touched them. Their wounds healed. The cursed brands on their skin burned away in bursts of silver smoke. The priests stumbled back, crying out as their spells turned to ash in their hands. The fire didn't destroy this time. It purified. The wolves howled, not in pain, but in release. The sound rolled across the battlefield like thunder, shaking the Roman ranks. Draven's soldiers faltered. The ones who had mocked the wolves now stared at them in terror. Lyra's gaze swept over the chaos. "This is not your sacrifice," she said, her voice breaking like dawn over the field. "This is your freedom," Draven snarled. "Blasphemy!" He tore a dagger from his belt and lunged forward, silver aimed for her heart. Cassian's chains shattered as he shifted mid-stride, the sound of bones snapping into power echoing across the field. His wolf form slammed into Draven before the dagger could strike. The two collided with brutal force, steel against fur, fury against vengeance. Lyra's eyes blazed brighter, her voice trembling with quiet power. "No more blood," she said. But Draven didn't stop. The man was driven by fanaticism, by the promise of immortal reward. He clawed at Cassian's throat, growling words of curse and conquest. Lyra lifted her palm. A sphere of fire coalesced, soft at first, then brighter, purer, not red, not orange, but silver white, like the light of creation itself. She walked forward as Cassian pinned the general to the earth. The flames licked her skin, wrapping around her like wings. Draven spat blood in defiance. "You think the gods will forgive you?" Lyra crouched before him, her hand hovering above his chest. "The gods do not rule me," she said. "They never did." The fire sank into him. There was no scream, no explosion, only silence. His eyes went wide as the flame passed through him, leaving behind no wound, no smoke. Only stillness. His body fell back, weightless, like a man freed from a lifetime of chains. Lyra stood, the air shimmering with heat. Cassian's wolf form shifted back, his breath ragged, his chest streaked with blood and ash. He looked up at her, at the woman who had become something more than mortal. "Lyra," he whispered, his voice breaking. "Forgive me. I never wanted to be your cage." She turned to him. For a heartbeat, the fury faded, replaced by something achingly human. She knelt before him, pressing her palm to his cheek. The warmth that passed through her hand wasn't just fire. It was forgiveness. Her lips parted. "Then fight beside me," she said, her voice low, alive with power and pain. "Or stay out of my way." Cassian's hand trembled as he reached for hers. "Always beside you." The world trembled again, but this time, not from battle. From awakening. The freed wolves gathered behind them, eyes shining with new light. The curse that had bound them to the Romans cracked like glass, each fragment dissolving into ash. Lyra turned toward the city. The Colosseum loomed in the distance, its arches bleeding firelight. Inside, more wolves waited, prisoners, sacrifices, forgotten. She could hear their heartbeats, faint but unbroken. She started walking. Cassian followed. As they moved, the air shimmered around her, the flames responding to her pulse. They rose like a halo, swirling with whispers of voices long silenced. She could hear them now. The souls of the fallen, the wolves burned alive under Roman cruelty. Their pain had anchored her power once. Now, it fueled her purpose. She raised her hand toward the sky, and the blood-red moon blazed white. The battlefield illuminated in celestial brilliance. Cassian shielded his eyes. "Lyra, what are you doing?" Her voice carried over the wind. "Ending this." The light descended like a wave. Every Roman sigil melted from its banners. Every weapon forged in silver turned to harmless dust. The chains that bound the wolves shattered in unison, falling to the ground like rain. And then, silence. The only sound was the breathing of thousands freed. The night itself seemed to hold its breath. Lyra's knees buckled, exhaustion creeping through the edges of her power. Cassian caught her before she fell. Her head rested against his chest, her breath shallow. "It's over," she murmured. "Not yet," he said softly. "Rome will rise again. You know it will." Her eyes opened, calm, certain. "Then so will I?" He looked at her, at the faint smile that broke through her fatigue. "You can't keep carrying this alone, Lyra. The prophecy—" She silenced him with a look. "The prophecy said I would burn the world. It never said I couldn't choose how." Her fingers brushed the scar at his jaw, the same place where her flame had once left its mark. "I am not their weapon, Cassian. I am not your sacrifice." He held her gaze, the words sinking deep. "Then what are you?" She turned toward the moon, eyes glowing once more. "I am what they feared most, the proof that even fire can heal." Behind them, the wolves bowed their heads, not in worship, in reverence, in belief. The red clouds drifted apart, revealing a sky untouched for centuries, stars blinking through smoke, pure and cold. Cassian stood beside her, silent. He didn't reach for her this time. He didn't have to. The bond between them no longer needed chains, vows, or fate. It existed in the quiet, in the shared heartbeat of two souls who had survived what should have broken them. Lyra looked upon the ruins of Rome, the empire that had built its throne on the bones of her kind, and whispered, "Let the world remember what happens when you try to cage the divine." The wind carried her words through the night, across the fallen city, over rivers and forests, and the distant mountains where wolves once roamed free. And as the first light of dawn began to bleed across the horizon, Lyra stood tall, no longer hunted, no longer broken. The flame of destruction had become the flame of renewal. She had burned the curse away, but in doing so, she had claimed something greater: herself. And though the war was not yet done, for the first time in centuries, the wolves looked upon the rising sun and did not see a threat. They saw hope, reflected in the eyes of the woman who had once been their doom and was now their salvation. Lyra closed her eyes, breathing in the morning air. Her pulse matched the rhythm of the earth beneath her feet. Cassian's presence lingered at her side, steady, unyielding. For the first time, she didn't feel the need to run. Her voice, soft, final, broke the silence. "The gods made me fire, but I chose to be light." And as the last embers of night faded into day, the wolves howled, not for vengeance, but for rebirth. Their queen walked among them, no longer burdened by destiny, but bound to it on her own terms. The prophecy had ended, and something greater had begun. The battlefield still breathed, shallow, weary, as if the earth itself were trying to remember what peace felt like. Smoke rose in ribbons, twisting skyward in ghostly spirals that caught the dying glow of the blood moon. The ash that drifted through the air shimmered like fractured starlight, settling over the ruins of Rome, over the broken chains, over the wolves who now stood free. Lyra stood at the heart of it all. Her feet were bare against the scorched ground, her body haloed in faint silver light that pulsed with the rhythm of her heart. Around her, the world exhaled, the fires dimming, the cries fading, the power that had consumed her finally quieting into something that almost felt human again. Cassian stood beside her, silent, his armor dented, his hands streaked with the blood of both men and monsters. His eyes, dark and searching, lingered on her profile, the way her hair lifted in the wind, the faint tremor in her hands as she held herself still. He wanted to speak, but words felt too fragile for what stood between them. The ruin, the victory, the unbearable beauty of her standing there, both destroyer and deliverer. For a long moment, neither moved. Then Lyra lifted her gaze to the horizon. The first rays of dawn had begun to bleed through the smoke. Not red, not violent, but soft, almost forgiving. The sky, once painted in blood, now glowed pale gold, and in that fragile light, her expression shifted. Not triumph, not grief, something in between. "I thought," she whispered, her voice low, "that when it ended, I'd feel whole again." Cassian turned toward her, his brow furrowed. "And do you?" She exhaled, the sound fragile as breath on glass. "No, just hollow." Her hand lifted to her chest as if feeling for something missing. "As if the fire burned through me and left the echo of what I was supposed to be." The silence that followed pressed close. Cassian stepped closer, the faint clink of his armor breaking the stillness. "You did what no one else could. You freed them, Lyra. You saved us all." Her eyes slid to him, and in them lived both light and storm. "Did I save us?" she asked softly. "Or just delay what we are?" He frowned. "What we are?" She looked toward the wolves scattered across the field, some weeping, some kneeling, some too numb to move. Beasts pretending to be gods, gods pretending to be human, always trapped in between. Her words cut deeper than she intended, and Cassian's jaw tightened. He reached for her hand, his fingers hovering before he finally dared to touch her. Her skin was warm, but no longer burning. "Then what are you, Lyra?" he asked. Her gaze found his. "The question isn't what I am," she said, her voice trembling. "It's whether you still see me as her." His breath caught. "Her?" "The one you swore to protect," she said. "The one you almost killed." Cassian's throat worked, but no words came. The memory of the council, of his hesitation, of her scream echoing through the arena, all came rushing back. The moment his love had faltered under the weight of his duty. He whispered, "I see you now." Her eyes softened, but pain lingered there. Deep. Endless. "You see me," she said, "but do you believe in me?" The question lingered between them, heavy, electric. Cassian looked away first, his voice breaking. "You don't need my belief." Her lips curved, but the smile was hollow. "No," she said, "but I wanted it." The wind picked up, swirling through the ruins, carrying the faint scent of iron and rain. The wolves lifted their heads, sensing something in her tone, a farewell hidden beneath the quiet. Lyra turned toward the horizon again. The light reflected in her eyes like glass catching flame. "I was made to burn," she said, her voice distant now, almost reverent. "And every time I rise from the ashes, I lose a little more of who I was." Cassian stepped forward, the words tearing from him before he could stop them. "Then let me be what you have left." She closed her eyes, letting his voice wash over her. When she spoke, it was a whisper barely carried by the wind. "If you stand beside fire long enough, Cassian, you stop fearing it. But you also stop feeling the warmth." He flinched. She turned to face him, the last light of the moon flickering across her face. "Would you still reach for me?" she asked. "If you knew I could burn you again?" His answer came in silence, in the way his jaw set, in the way his eyes didn't look away. But she only smiled, not cruelly, not bitterly, but as one who had already seen the end. "You don't have to," she whispered. "Not yet." She took a step back, and the air shimmered around her. The silver flame pulsed faintly under her skin, not wild, not devouring, but calm. Controlled. Cassian felt his heart clench. "Where will you go?" "Where the fire sleeps," she said. until it's needed again. He wanted to stop her, to hold her, to beg her to stay. But something in her expression warned him this wasn't goodbye. It was destiny drawing breath again. Lyra's gaze softened. "You were right once," she said. "The prophecy didn't say how I'd burn the world. Maybe it never was about destruction. Maybe it was about this. The moment after." The wind carried her hair across her face, and when she brushed it back, her eyes gleamed wet. "Tell them," she murmured, "that the fire didn't take me. I walked into it." Cassian reached out, but she was already fading into light. The flames that rose around her weren't violent this time. They glowed gentle, like dawn breaking through mist. The ashes lifted, dancing in slow spirals around her, each one glowing before dissolving into the air like embers turning to stars. When the last spark disappeared, the field fell silent. Cassian stood alone, the scent of smoke still clinging to him, her warmth still on his skin. Above, the sun finally rose, pale gold spilling over the ruins. It touched the chains, the stones, the wolves, and finally, his face. He breathed out, his voice a quiet confession to the wind. "I would have chosen you," he said, "even if it killed me." The wind carried his words away, toward the mountains, the forests, wherever her light had gone. And for a moment, the silver glow returned. Faint, like a heartbeat answering from beyond the horizon, the ashes scattered one last time, drifting upward like constellations being born. Lyra's voice, soft, distant, echoing like the last whisper of fire, lingered over the ruins. "Would you have chosen me, or feared me too?" The question lingered long after the sound faded, pressing into the listener's chest like a secret waiting to be answered. Then, silence. A single spark flared across the screen, a whisper of silver fire twisting into the shape of her mark. Her voice, low and haunting, returned one final time. "If this story lit something inside you, subscribe to Sophie's Romance Collections. Here, every tale burns, heals, and never fades." The flame winked out, and only the echo of her heartbeat remained. The battlefield lies silent now, an ocean of smoldering ash beneath the dimming blood moon. The cries that once tore through the night have faded into a hollow stillness, the kind that breathes in the aftermath of gods and monsters. Lyra stands in the center of it all, her silver flame dimmed to embers that pulse faintly beneath her skin. Every heartbeat feels like an echo of something that used to burn brighter, stronger. Cassian stands behind her, close enough to feel the dying warmth radiating from her body, yet far enough that the gulf between them feels infinite. The wind whispers through the charred remains of banners and armor, carrying with it the scent of blood, iron, and something more ancient, the residue of prophecy. Lyra's gaze sweeps over the ruins of Rome's cruelty, the broken altars where wolves once knelt, the shattered chains still clinging to scorched earth. For the first time, she feels neither hunted nor cursed. But peace. Peace does not follow victory. It never does. Her voice, low and trembling, breaks the silence. "It's over," she whispers, though even as she says it, she knows it's a lie. The world does not end with fire. It reshapes itself in the smoke. Cassian steps forward, his chest rising with labored breath. "No," he murmurs. "It's only beginning." His eyes find hers, the golden flecks dimmed with exhaustion and sorrow. He's seen what she's become, the living embodiment of the prophecy they all feared. And yet, even in his fear, there's awe. Lyra turns to him, searching for the remnants of the man who once swore to protect her from the council, from destiny, from herself. "Do you regret it?" she asks, her tone steady but her voice soft enough to betray the tremor beneath. Cassian's throat tightens. Regret? He repeats. I regret every moment I didn't stand beside you. Every time I let fear decide what I should have fought for. He takes a hesitant step closer, the weight of his guilt pressing against his voice. But I don't regret loving you. The words hang between them, fragile, unsteady, a confession in the ruins. Lyra closes her eyes, her lashes trembling. Love. The word once meant salvation. Now it feels like a wound that never truly heals. You say that now, she breathes. But what happens when the world turns against me again? He doesn't answer. He doesn't have to. The silence tells her enough. Above them, the moon begins to pale, its crimson glow fading to a ghostly silver. The night that witnessed her fury now recedes, leaving only the faint hum of dawn. And yet, in that fragile light, something stirs. A whisper in the wind, ancient and cold. It slides across her skin like the brush of unseen fingers. She is not the only one. The words are faint, carried through the shifting mist that dances over the battlefield. Lyra freezes. Her pulse quickens, the silver beneath her skin flickering in response. Cassian lifts his head, scanning the darkness. What was that? Lyra doesn't move. Her eyes narrow, her instincts sharpening like a blade. The air feels heavier suddenly. Charged, watchful. Something's still here, she says quietly. From the far edge of the ruins, a figure stands. The mist curls around them like a living thing, veiling their shape but not their presence. Two eyes cut through the darkness, red, burning, unyielding. Cassian's hand instinctively moves to the hilt of his blade, but Lyra raises a hand to stop him. No, she whispers. Let them look. The figure does not move closer, but its stare pierces the distance between them. A presence older than blood, older than prophecy, hums through the air. The ground beneath Lyra's feet trembles, responding to the unspoken power radiating from that gaze. Then a voice, low, resonant, threaded with something primal, slips through the silence. The fire she awakened was never meant to die. Lyra's heart stutters, the wind stills. Cassian takes a step forward, growling under his breath. Show yourself! But the figure does not obey. The mist thickens, swirling upward as though feeding on the dying moonlight. For a moment, it almost seems as though the night itself is alive, reshaping into something sentient. Lyra's fingers twitch, flame coiling faintly at her fingertips. Silver, controlled, dangerous. You feel that? She murmurs. Cassian nods. Power. Lyra's eyes remain locked on the shadow. No, she says softly. Challenge. The red eyes narrow, and for the briefest instant, she senses something familiar. The echo of her own energy reflected back at her. Then the mist collapses. The figure vanishing into it as though the earth itself swallows them whole. The wind rushes back with a sigh, scattering ash like dusted stars across the blackened ground. Cassian exhales slowly. What was that? Lyra stares into the emptiness where the figure once stood. Her heartbeat thrums in her throat, steady but laced with foreboding. A promise, she says, or a warning. She looks down at her hands, the same hands that burned and healed, destroyed and saved. The prophecy said I would end the curse, she whispers. But maybe ending one curse awakens another. Cassian reaches out, his fingers brushing her arm, grounding her. Whatever comes next, we face it together. Lyra's gaze drifts toward the horizon, where dawn bleeds faintly into the sky. You don't understand, she murmurs. This isn't over. The words leave her lips like a vow, soft but resolute. The wind howls once more, wrapping around them in a spiral of ash and ember. Somewhere in the distance, a wolf's cry echoes, not one of mourning, but of warning. Lyra tilts her head, her silver eyes catching the first light of dawn. There's something wild in her expression, something untamed and alive. Her voice, calm yet laced with defiance, carries across the broken field. The fire doesn't end with me. Cassian's breath catches. He knows that tone, the quiet before another storm. Lyra. She turns to him, and for a heartbeat, the fragile tenderness returns. I'm not your sacrifice, she says softly. Not anyone's. Then she steps forward into the rising light. The silver within her flares, catching the dawn's hue. Molten, brilliant, alive. Around her, the ashes lift and swirl as though drawn to her heartbeat. The earth hums beneath her feet. Cassian watches, torn between awe and dread, as her silhouette blurs against the horizon. He senses it deep within him. This was not the end of her story. It was the beginning of something larger, darker, inevitable. And somewhere far beyond the edge of dawn, in a forest untouched by fire, a pair of crimson eyes open once more. The whisper returns, ancient, patient, hungering. The true alpha hasn't risen yet. A heartbeat later, silence. The wind carries the last remnants of smoke into the sky, fading into soft light. The world breathes, suspended between endings and beginnings. And beneath that breath, the fire she awakened, the power that rewrote destiny, still burns unseen, waiting. Because stories like hers never die. They transform, they linger, they haunt. And somewhere beyond sight, the next chapter waits to rise. The wind fades, the fire sleeps, but it does not die. And somewhere, far beyond the reach of this night, destiny watches, waiting for the next spark. If her story burned something into your heart, if her fight made you feel alive, don't let it end here. Subscribe to Sophie's Romance Collections, where every flame finds its voice, every love defies fate, and every story reminds you. This isn't over.